all you need to know about for loops is that you're looping through the different elements in a sequence. But when I write something like, say, for color in colors list or for element in sequence, what I'm doing is I'm kind of getting whatever is that element there, so the string red, but I'm not actually going to be able to change that string. So if I were to write a line of code that said color equals, let's say, color plus equals exclamation mark. That's not going to change every element in the string without adding a adding an exclamation mark to it, because it's like when you use this way of writing it for element in sequence, it kind of gets a copy of what you're accessing in the moment. If you wanted to change what was actually in the original list, well, that's why we need to use indexing. But if we need to use indexing, then I need to be able to have a range of indexes that match the indexes of my actual list. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but remember, all a for loop can do is it can only loop through sequences of things. But there's a way to generate a sequence of numbers that match the indices of our list, and that's where the range function comes in. So the range function, we have it here. Range, here you go, opening brackets. First parameter, start. Second parameter, stop. And last parameter, optional of course, is your step. It's kind of like how the random range function works, except that it gives you a whole range of numbers. So if I were to write range 2, 12, 3, it would start at 2, go up until not including 12, in steps of 3. So 2, 5, 8, 11. That's my sequence of numbers. So if I were to do for range, for let's say for I in range of that, it would start, the first number it would go would be 2, 5, 8, 11. That's not very useful for indices, because indices are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up until the length of your list. Which is why we use something like this, range 0 to 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or even more specific, range of 0 to the length of the list that you're working with. And that will produce the correct sequence of numbers that you want. So in this case, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'll have that sequence of numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just something to keep in mind with the range function. If you put only one parameter in the brackets, it will think that you're talking about where to stop, and therefore it will assume and always start at 0 and then go up until, but not including, where you stop. So, why is this good? Because I want to be able to do something with indices. So inside my my body of my loop, I have colors list square bracket I equals white. Now, if we remember this example here where colors list square bracket 2 equals pink, it's the same thing, but because I put I will change every time. So that accesses every single element in the list. It will start at I is 0, so colors list 0 equals white. Go to the next one, I is 1, colors list 1 equals white. They'll go to the next one, colors list 2 equals white, colors list 3 equals white, colors list 4 equals white, colors list 5 equals white. Which means at the very end of this, function, what we would get, if I were to print it out, we would get white, I'm going to abbreviate it again, white, 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 all the way to the very end. And that's what colors list will now be. Because you have changed, the same way that you changed it the first time, you have changed all of them now into white. So that's why if you want to actually change the original list that you're working with, you want to use for I in range of the length of your list. Because you want to be able to have all the indices that you need. Now, of course, if you wanted to, I don't know why you would want to, you might want to, you could always do a range that goes backwards, descending order. So as long as you start with a bigger number and with a smaller number and have a negative step, you'll be able to go down that way. But yeah, any questions on how the for loop works there with lists? Okay, good. Now I'll go through some examples, and they'll help you get some ideas on how you would apply these lists and for loops. So this is like, I want to get the longest word, or if I want to get like a biggest number or something like that, I would do something like this. Def get longest word. Okay, I want to get the longest word from a paragraph. It's probably a string. It's hard to work with strings with for loops. So I'm going to change the string into a list. And the way we do that is with a new string method, dot split. And that basically, if I were to do dot split with nothing inside the brackets, it would take my string and it would split my string into a list by removing all of the white spaces. So let me give you an example. So if my string was A space space space, B space C, and I did a dot split on it, it would change it to the string, it would change it to the list of A, B, C. Yeah, so that's what the dot split does. However, let's say I put something inside there. Let's say I put some string inside there. It will now split on whatever that character is. So if I did something like here, A space space space, B dot C, that would now split here. A space space space, B, comma, C. So if you want, you can control what you split your string up into, and that will make your elements in your list. But for most intents and purposes, you're probably just going to want to split it up by the white space anyway. So with that happening, you now have a words list based on your paragraph. So common way to think about if I want to get the longest something, or I want to get the smallest number or something like that, if I'm going to do it, the easiest process is to say, okay, I'm going to take one item in the list to start off with and say, this is my, at the moment, this is the smallest or largest item that I'm looking at. Then I'm going to look at the next item in the list and say, is this smaller or larger than this one? Let's say I'm looking for the largest one. Is this larger? So remember, the first part, longest word, I initialize that to some item in the list. Let's start with the first item, so 0. Cool, that's my longest word. Now I'm going to go through each word in the list. Let's see, if the length of the word that I'm looking at the moment is greater than the length of the longest word that I had before, well then I'm going to toss out that word and create a new longest word as the word that I'm looking at. And now I have a new longest word. Go to the next one. Is this longer or shorter? It's shorter? Okay, let's skip to the next one. Is this longer or shorter? It's longer. Let's assign this to become the new longest word. And I keep on going. So if I use that process and I go all the way to the end of my list, by nature of the process, my longest word will be the longest word from the list. And then at the end, I just return, because that's the purpose of the function, I just return my longest word. Now make sure that your return statement is outside of your loop, because if it's inside your loop, you'll go through one iteration of your loop, you'll hit the return function, you'll hit the return keyword, and it'll exit the function, and you didn't do your job right. Okay. Any questions on how that works? Good. Get percentage marks. This is an example of if I wanted to change an original list that's passed to me. So I might have a list that contains marks, which is maybe in the raw values of 35, 40, or whatever. But I want it in percentages, and I want to change the original list. So it's passed me some marks. It's passed me some percent, like a denominator, like out of 100 or out of 50. Now I'm going to do this for I in range, because I want to change each individual thing. For I in range of 0 to length of the list that's passed, I'm going to change the elements at that point. So marks list square bracket I is assigned. Well, what do I want to do? Probably take the mark divided by whatever it's out of, and I'll get a decimal point number, and times it by 100. That'll give me the percentage. So marks list I, so whatever it is at that moment, divided by out of, maybe I set it to 50, times 100. And that should give me a percentage value that I can now assign back to whatever element was at that position. A simple example, if I have time, is if my list to start off with was 10, 20, 50, right? And my out of, let's say, was 50. For I in range 0 to length of max list, so length of max list is 3, so it's 0 to 3, not including 3. So the sequence would be 0, 1, 2. Great. Max list at I, at the moment 0, max list 0 is now assigned max list 0 divided by 50. So 10 divided by 50 times 100, which is 20.0, if I'm not mistaken. So then this guy, based on that line of code, will now be changed to 20.0. End of the iteration of the loop, go back to the start. I is now 1. Max list 1 is assigned max list 1 is 20 divided by 50 times 100. I believe that is 40.0. And then go to the next iteration of the loop, where I is 2. Max list 2 is now max list 2, which is 50 divided by 50, which is 1 times 100, so that's 100. And that will change the original list. So that's an example of how you change. Yes?
Do we have to return the marked list again as well?
No, you don't, because if you're changing the original list, then what was passed is now physically being changed, so you don't have to return the marked list. Good question, because the next one, and most of the time, you will need to return a new list based on stuff that you have. So if I want to return a new list based on what I've been given, this is a great example. So def create unique lists. What this function is doing is it's going to get a list of words, and then it's going to give me back a new list with no duplicates in it. So if that's the case, if I want to return a new list, I have to initialize an empty list. So I have the start of my function saying unique list is assigned an empty list. Again, you can just do that with square brackets. Now I'm going to look at every word in this words list. For word in words list, because remember, I only need to see what's there. I don't need to change what's there. So I'm going to use for word in words list. If that word I'm looking at the moment is not in the unique list that I started with, then I'm going to add it to the unique list. So the first one, well, it's not there, so I'm going to put it in. Second one, it may be there. If it is there, okay, I'm going to go to the next loop. Third one, is it inside the unique list? It is. Okay, I go to the next one. Fourth one, is it inside the unique list? It's not. I'm going to put it inside there. And I keep on looping through my words list until the end of it. And by the time I'm finished, based on my logic here with my Boolean condition, I would have a unique list at the end of it, and that one I want to return back to the user. Does anyone have any questions on this one? Okay, good. So this example here, and this example here, these are just basically different versions of what you need to do in some of your assignments today. There is also a question on translating a while loop to a for loop. Please do not delete the while loop, but also it's a very common exam question or test question. Change this while loop into a for loop. And what we want you guys to do is to change it in a way that is most accurate. So don't change any variable names. Try not to do any hard coding.